And welcome to our weekly live stream coming to you from the Huckabee Theater in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. This is where the magic happens every weekend when we do our show. And I'm sure you're watching it every weekend because if you weren't, you might even not know about this little exercise that we do. Just a little lagniappe, as they say down in South Louisiana, that we try to throw in every week. We take your questions. We comment on the news of the day. It's just fun, and it's all absolutely 100% live. You see, I'm checking my pulse. I'm live. That's how we know. We all have a pulse here, and that's how we can determine it. So Pam Case is with us, as she is every week. She's the senior producer of our show, and she's going to be reading the questions and tossing those to me. We would love to get your questions, so be sure to send them in the chat. You can also send us a super chat. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? There will be moderators watching the chat. They will be quick to get those questions and comments to us. But of course, we always want to remind you, and this is a great time to do it, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll never miss one of our videos. We'll let you know when it is going to happen. Hit the notification bell. That makes sure that you get notified. We love your comments, good, bad, or ugly. And we hope that you will give us a thumbs up, like, and that you will share this video, especially right now, because we're just getting started. And if you hit the share button, send it to all your friends, both of them, hopefully, got that. Send it to all your friends, and hopefully they will join you in being part of our live stream here on this Friday, live from our theater. We're going to get started. I just watched less than an hour ago President Biden in a news conference, and I've seen some people try to spin plates, but his came crashing to the floor, shattering, because this morning job numbers came out. 194,000 jobs announced, less than half of what had been predicted by all the economists. Now, granted, the economists always are surprised by everything that happens, but this was really a gut punch to the Biden administration because they were expecting more than twice this. The job numbers on a monthly basis have continued to plummet. And interestingly, the reason they're so bad, according to the Bureau of Labor, which is Biden's department, I don't know that they communicated with each other. But the fact is, a whole lot of people have just simply left the workforce. They're not even trying anymore. And that's why the unemployment rate is below 5%. And that's what Biden kept bragging about. Hey, it's under 5%. Yes, Mr. President, it is, because a lot of people are just living off government checks and they've quit looking. And that's what your own department said. But we had the lowest number of new job numbers that we've had all year, and nobody saw it coming. It's hard to even watch this stuff. And I'm trying not to be somebody sounding like an overly partisan guy that I just don't like anything Biden does. I promise you, my friend, if he was doing something that I could applaud, I would do it just for the sake of bipartisanship. But I'm struggling. One of the things that's making it difficult for people to take him seriously is his inability to even read his own teleprompter. Now, you got to know that he's read this stuff before. He didn't walk out and read it cold. But I want you to watch this clip where he is trying to say telephone, but instead he uses the word television. But the whole thing, it sounds like gibberish. Watch.
If I can digress for just a second. Last night I was on television. I was on the telephone with a person at an emergency hospital ward.
Yeah. Telephone, television is tele something. It's probably Tele-Joe, which is just bizarre. Now, he's also saying that employee vaccination rates are up. Here's another example where you got to remember, Biden is now advocating for firing people who don't get the vaccination. So when he says the rates are up, well, if you shrink the universe in which people are even going to be demanded to get it, of course the rates will go up. Let's watch.
Vaccination requirements result in more people getting vaccinated. In the past few weeks, as more and more organizations have implemented their own requirements, they've seen their vaccination rates rise dramatically. For example, the Department of Defense has gone from 67% of active duty forces being vaccinated to 97% as of tomorrow.
Yeah, for some people, if it's like a gun to your head, get the shot or go home without a paycheck, a lot of people are doing it. I'm just struggling trying to figure out the rationale of forcing something and changing the rules, because Joe Biden, in the early days, they were talking about that the science said we would get herd immunity if we got 60% of the people vaccinated. And then just a week or so ago, he said, now we need to get to 97, 98% vaccination rate. Is Joe the new scientist that's coming up with this stuff? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? We haven't a clue. Now, this next one is the president saying there are bigger issues than people getting fired. Watch.
More people are getting vaccinated. More lives are being saved. Let's be clear. When you see headlines and reports of mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs, look at the bigger story.
For the people getting fired, that is the bigger story. That is the biggest story in the whole world. They don't have a livelihood anymore. And he seems callous and indifferent to it. You know why? Because he's had a government job for the past 50 plus years. He's never had to worry about getting a paycheck. Because even during the worst days of the pandemic, not one person in government missed his or her paycheck. You might have missed yours. You might have been like me, own some small businesses, and you had to fill the paychecks of your employees because there wasn't any money in the business coming in. And the only way to get your employees paid was to pay it out of your own retirement funds in pocket. A lot of us had to do that. Joe wouldn't understand that. He's never signed the front of the paycheck. He's had a government check for most of his life. In that brief period when he was between vice president and president, he made about $18 million doing some consulting and speaking and so on. He made really good. He didn't have to worry. He does not understand that some of you have to worry about not having a job. It is just utterly amazing. Pam, are we getting some questions today?
We are indeed, and so happy to have a super chat already. Mark Smith, thank you for that. And of course, folks, take the time to share right now because this is live. Here's a question from Victor Ellis from Waynesville, Missouri. Can you break down in layman's terms what all the fuss is about with the spending bills that the Democrats are trying to pass?
A Senate bill, which was the infrastructure bill, and that was mostly, not all, but mostly roads, bridges, airports, sewer systems, water systems, legitimate and honest infrastructure. And the country needs it. The U.S. Society of Engineers actually has identified about $3 trillion worth of infrastructure needs because we have a lot of aging bridges that are about to fall down. I don't have to tell you, if you drive on the roads of America, how many potholes there are, how much traffic congestion because we don't have enough lanes and on and on. Yes, there is a need for infrastructure. Yes, it puts a lot of people to work. So those are good jobs, good paying jobs, and they build a country and they build a skeletal system upon which the economy runs. The Democrats, primarily led by Bernie Sanders and AOC and Rashida Tlaib, the squad, and most left-wing part of the Democrat Party, have been pushing an additional $3.5 trillion. Now, if you want to kind of get a good graphic of that, go to Huckabee.tv, go to our YouTube channel, look at what we did last week in the monologue, showing you visually with some gel beads what $1 trillion looks like. It'll blow your mind. I had so many people that emailed me this week and just said, man, had no idea, didn't realize it was like that. But to put it in terms, $3.5 trillion plus the $1.2 trillion, most people at the Congressional Budget Office are saying it's going to be more like $6 trillion. Joe Biden has said it's not going to cost anything because it's all paid for. Now, what he means by that is he's going to raise taxes by $5 trillion. And in his mind, if you pay for it with new taxes, then it doesn't cost anything. That's like saying you've paid your mortgage on your home for the past 30 years, but it didn't cost anything because you paid for it. I mean, on what universe would anybody think that makes sense? But you've asked about, in practical terms, what does it mean? Most of the $3.5 trillion are what the Democrats are calling human infrastructure. Free college tuition, free childcare, loan forgiveness for student loans. It means also, did I say free college? I think I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, free college, guaranteed income, a whole bunch, about $1 trillion worth of climate change connected stuff, which means solar and wind, even though the marketplace isn't buying it yet. So it's a lot of an enormous amount of government feel-good stuff, spending money and not really having any hope that we'll see something from it. But that money, that cost, is going to be passed on to your grandchildren. That's why it should worry you.
Wanted to add this too. David White in a super chat said, so they are trying no debt ceiling. Well, we have one, 24 plus trillion in debt. Imagine not having one. Millions of trillions. That's craziness.
Yeah. You know, it used to be, I remember in the 60s, Senator Everett Dirksen from Illinois once was quoted as saying, $1 billion here and $1 billion there. And the next thing you know, we're talking real money. That seems like the language of a piker now. I mean, we're talking trillions and trillions. And to a lot of these people in Washington, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there, hey, it doesn't really matter. but it does matter. And that is your money. The thing I wish I could just somehow convey with force is that it's not the money of some people in Washington that personally are writing checks to make this happen. They are writing the checks out of your bank account. This is going to cost you out of your paycheck. And I don't know if you've checked your bills this past month, but the latest economic survey is that the average American family lost $175 just last month on the inflation cost of groceries, gasoline, and utilities. Let that sink in. That's $175, as if you took $175, went out to the street in front of your house and threw it in the street and said, bye-bye. So I don't know how much that means to you. You can afford to throw $175 down the toilet, but that's what you did last month. You didn't get anything for it. It was inflation. That was a tax on your income. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, as we like to ask you to do. Hit the notification bell and leave us a comment, good, bad, ugly. Like the video, this conversation that we're having, and be sure to share it with your friends.
All right, so we're getting hellos, by the way, from Virginia, Pennsylvania. I even like this from up in Maryland. Hey, y'all. I love that. So thank you for that as well. I got a question for you, Gov. Are you aware of this? Terry L. Green Colnane has written about, what is this Brandon story? I think I missed it. They're referring to the chants, the memes that are out there that say, let's go Brandon. Are you familiar with that?
There's something in the back of my mind, Vic, but the answer is I cannot place what that is.
I think it was a NASCAR interview. I think just a short interview with a NASCAR driver. He had won a race, and a little expletive got out there.
I was going to say, now I remember what it is. It was at Talladega.
Yes.
And he was being interviewed. And in the background, you could hear the crowd chanting something that we cannot say, even online. I mean, legally we could, because it's online, but morally and ethically, we won't.
Right.
But yes, I know what you're talking about now. And so the reporter tried to cover and was saying that the reporter said, oh, they're saying, go Brandon. Well, they weren't saying, go Brandon.
Right.
Yes,
And how about the phenomenon of that, Governor? Something in a simple interview that has literally become a meme across the internet.
It's pretty revealing, isn't it? By the way, this week, poll numbers for President Biden are dropping like a rock. Quinnipiac poll, 38% approval. I mean, that's seriously underwater for a president who reportedly got 74 million votes, more than any person in the history of the presidency. So let's see. All right, let's go. We've got another piece here. This is regarding the incredible controversy over Hunter Biden, who is apparently, after being an energy executive, which he had no background for, but making $800,000 a month for that. When all those sort of things fell apart, he decided to become an artist. No formal training. Basically, he gets a straw and blows paint through it. I guess he's had some experience with straws. I'll leave it at that. But Hunter Biden is now selling his artwork for anywhere from $75,000 to $500,000 per painting. Pam, I don't think we're going to be buying any to put around the walls of our theater. I'm pretty sure we can't afford that. But who's buying that? We'd love to know, because it'd be nice to find out if somebody is buying it as a money laundering opportunity, or they're buying it because they want to curry favor with the White House. So are these lobbyists who are buying it? Are they foreign governments that are buying? But you know what the response to the White House is? Well, we don't get into that. Well, you should get into it, because it might have something to tell us. Let's watch Jen Psaki try to dodge this one.
This is exactly what ethicists said they were worried about.
What is specifically?
The fact that the president's
That he
son,
reportedly attended an event?
well, the president's son would be selling artwork and then meeting potentially with people who would seek to buy it. If you have attendees at that event who might be seeking either jobs in this administration or favors from this administration, isn't it an awkward situation to put the president in?
Again, the gallerist has spoken to, we've spoken to the specifics, what the gallerist has agreed to, and what recommendations were made. I've done that several times. I don't have additional details for it from here. I point you to them. Go ahead.
That was a quick shuffle. Let's go on. But even the reporters in the White House who have basically spent the last 8 months licking Joe Biden's shoes and giving him a tongue bath every day, this is beginning to wear a little thin, even with the reporters in the White House, because right after that, she gets the very same question again. Here it is.
So does this White House not have any concerns about the photos that have emerged of showing Hunter Biden at that gallery alongside prospective buyers?
I point you to the gallerist on specifics of the restrictions that were put in place.
Great, but what about the position of this White House? This is a president who ran on being transparent, and you've got...
And we were very transparent about what recommendations were made to the gallerist, and I would again point to them or the many times I've spoken about that from here.
Same question, same non-answer. It's a legitimate question, and people really should be able to know that. I mentioned about the polling a moment ago. The numbers are so bad that even MSNBC is having to report it.
As new polling suggests the president receiving his lowest approval rating since taking office. In the latest Quinnipiac University poll, just 38% said they approved of President Biden's performance, compared to 53% who didn't. While Democrats and Republicans responded along party lines, 60% of independents, who, let's remember, played a key role in Joe Biden's 2020 election win, said they disapprove of his standing in office. The president's numbers have fallen off a cliff somewhat in recent months.
Now, I want you to keep in mind, that was not Fox News, that was not Newsmax or OAN. That was MSNBC. They said his numbers have fallen off a cliff. That's being very charitable about the whole thing. And in fact, it's so bad that Terry McAuliffe, who has been known to speak the accidental truth a couple of times when he told parents they have no business involving themselves in what their students, their children are learning in school, none of their business. Sit back and shut up, he said. Terry McAuliffe, in a question and answer session, basically on this call to donors, said that they're not inviting Joe Biden in to campaign for him because he's like dead weight and an anchor pulling them down. Listen to this.
But we got to get Democrats out to vote. We are facing a lot of headwinds from Washington. As you know, the president is unpopular today, unfortunately, here in Virginia. So we have got to plow through.
I just need to remind you that the president carried Virginia. It's a basically blue state, especially in the D.C. suburban area. And if the president is not popular there, imagine how unpopular he has become in other parts of the country. The significance of that is basically Terry McAuliffe, who's fighting for his life, trying to win back the governor's seat, is saying, we don't want Joe Biden to come in here because he will hurt us. It's almost like, I tweeted this the other night, and I said this on Sean Hannity's program on Fox this week. I said, having Joe Biden to come in and campaign for you is like announcing that you're going to open a restaurant and your head chef is Jeffrey Dahmer. I mean, you can't bring somebody in that could do more damage to you.
Wow.
Just crazy. Okay, Pam, we got some more questions.
We'll keep moving. John Bruno, Super Chat. Thank you, John, is asking, were you aware that Project Veritas whistleblower released emails showing that Pfizer is hiding the vaccine and that it's made with fetal tissue? About that.
It's not made with fetal tissue. That has been debunked time and again. There is a line that dates back to the 1960s, specifically 1966. And the line of stem cells that goes all the way back is part of a long string of scientific processes. But the vaccine is not a live vaccine anyway. It is a synthetic vaccine. So I've read that, and a lot of people have put that out on the internet and said, you know, aborted fetuses were used to develop it. That is simply not true. And, you know, I don't ask you to take my word for it. You may have all kinds of problems with the vaccine for a variety of reasons, but that should not be one of them because it is not a live vaccine and it was not developed from organic means. It's a synthetic and it's totally different. So look, there's so much misinformation that's out there let's all be careful, me, you, everybody, that we speak the truth, but speak it not from, I saw it on the internet, and that makes it so, but get it verified. By the way, I love Project Veritas. I think they do some phenomenal work. And what they did show was that there were some anxieties, even in Pfizer, about the fact that natural antibodies are basically stronger a protection than the vaccine, which I don't doubt at all. In fact, the Israeli studies show that, which is one of the reasons that many of us don't understand why the push for vaccine only and why not the allowance for the people who have had COVID and who are most likely well protected, better protected than people like me who have not had COVID, only had the vaccine. For people who have had COVID, have the antibodies, they shouldn't be required to get a vaccine. They don't necessarily need it.
I wanted to mention, too, you had mentioned debunking. And earlier in our chat, Deborah from Waleska, Georgia asked, I've been reading your daily newsletters that you email, and I thought that I read somewhere that Snopes is not a reliable fact checker, and she'd like to know if that's true.
It is true that they are not a reliable fact checker. Snopes is basically a left of center group that it has created this illusion that they're independent. They're not. There's nothing independent about Snopes. I've read stuff about me on there. Believe me, I know stuff about me, and the stuff I've read about me is nonsense, utterly ridiculous. But if people depend upon Snopes, they'd be better off depending on soaps. It's just not reliable. And the industry of fact checking, to me, is the biggest joke in the world. And I'm going to say this to you. If you get into the world of politics and become a candidate and a public figure, you will hate fact checkers because they're not checking facts. They're checking ideologies, and they're pushing a narrative. They're calling it fact checking. Glenn Kessler at the Washington Post is the famous fact checker for the Washington Post. Some of his stuff is so bad, he called me out. This was hilarious to me. He called me out and said that I said something that wasn't true. What I said, I quoted his paper, the Washington Post, and I didn't ascribe it to myself. I attributed it to the Post, and he didn't get onto the Post. He said that I had said something that wasn't true. I quoted his paper. That's fact checking for you.
All right, another super chat from Mark Smith. He says, I love your show, Governor. My question is, Joe Biden is ignoring a court order to reinstate Trump's stay in Mexico policy. What can be done to force him to act on that?
There would have to be some lawsuits filed. I think there have been some from several attorneys general from various states. It needs to be heard by a court and acted upon. Can you imagine if Donald Trump had just sort of thumbed his nose at various laws that he didn't like and said, no, I'm not going to follow those? I don't know how he gets away with it. And a lot of it is because nobody's calling attention, and therefore it doesn't become a big issue. If it were reversed and a Republican president, whoever the Republican president were just ignoring court orders and doing what he wanted to do, I promise you the whole press corps would be putting it on the front page of every paper and leading the news with, Day 14, the president defies court order. Doesn't happen with this administration. It is very frustrating to all of us.
Another one from another super chat, by the way. Oliver Klosoff is asking, I'm thinking we are being blinded for options about the COVID. Watched you so far and keep up the good fight.
Well, thank you, Oliver. I appreciate that. Look, I've tried to play it straight. I've said to my audience on my show, I've said it on Fox, I've said it in my newsletter, every which way I can say it. I believe COVID is a very real thing. I mentioned last week, close friend of ours died just last week, a week ago Wednesday. Broke my heart. One of several close friends that I personally have had that died of COVID in the last several months. Other friends have been in ICU for up to a month, all unvaccinated. I don't know personally, there may be some. I don't know of a vaccinated person who has had to be placed in ICU or who has died. Vaccination does not keep you from getting COVID. It may keep you from having a deadly case of it or having to be hospitalized. So you may still have some symptoms and so on. I would probably not be all excited about a very young person getting a vaccine. I wouldn't be hepped on that because we don't know the effects of a younger person. There have been some studies that show particularly younger men may have some adverse reactions to it. But if you're my age and you are constantly around people, hundreds and sometimes thousands at a time, you stop and think about the idea, if I get COVID, having had pneumonia, compromised lungs, over the age of 65, vaccine doesn't look too bad for me. It looks a heck of a lot better than dying in ICU, isolated from family and friends. But I do say this, it's your decision. And if you don't get the vaccination, it's not something I'm going to try to say, you ought to get it to show you love people. That has nothing to do with loving anybody. You just may have reasons that are none of my business. You don't have to tell me why you don't want to get it. My attitude is, if I have it and you don't, you are no threat to me. You're not going to scare me. I don't get this thing about if you're vaccinated, you want to demand that other people get vaccinated because you're afraid of them. That doesn't make sense to me.
Wow. Well, we still got room for another one. Ruth Koffold has written, are we getting closer to a convention of states? I just finished listening to Mark Levin's book of Liberty Amendments, and these are exactly what we need. And we have to mention, we're actually going to tackle that very subject with Mark Meckler tomorrow night.
Right. Picked a good time to ask the question because we're going to be talking about the Convention of States with Mark Meckler on the Huckabee Show this weekend on TBN, so don't miss it. I do think it's time for that. It's the only way some things are going to ever happen. I'm a part of a national movement, for example, for the balanced budget amendment. That has to be done by a convention of the states. Congress is never going to impose upon themselves a balanced budget amendment. They'll never put term limits on themselves. They'll never put any type of restrictions on their retirement plan. So on all those things, if we really want reform of the government, Convention of the States is the way to have it. Mark Meckler will talk about it this weekend on the show. Hey, we're about out of time, but I want to say thank you for joining with us. Be sure to leave your questions in the comments section. You can also subscribe so you'll know about our next chat together. Hit the notification bell. And as always, we'd love to get your comments and reactions. Now, if you're wondering, what are we going to have on the show tomorrow? Here's a little preview.
This week on Huckabee, former DHS Secretary Chad Wolf, the Mayberry man Rick Roberts.
You want to sit in it? I don't think I should. I can't do it. Could I?
Magician David Ferrari, and Jelly Lang's tribute to cancer patients. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.